Happy Halloween, everyone. It is October 19th, 2020. Welcome to episode 8 of Legacy Battle podcast. Don't adjust your screens. I have lost 25 pounds since the beginning of this show. Please join the Legacy Battle Facebook group and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're looking for sponsors, so hit us up on the webpage or whatever. We'd definitely love to do that. Also, check us out on
back here. So any sponsors,
put it on there.
We can fill this white in.
Also, check us out on ngscsports.com. NGSC Sports, we never stop. So they're sponsored by Arena Eats. Log on to their website at the arenaeats.app for the ultimate fan experience at your favorite sports venue. Arena Eats mobile app, pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order? Our next podcast is November 16th at 9 p.m. Joining us that night is former Atlanta Brave and Pittsburgh Pirate Sid Breen. We'll be debating the second Mount Rushmore of the New York Yankees. I'm Michael Adams. Here with me always, Brian King, Kevin Adams. If you're all wondering where Brett Ebert is tonight, he's under the weather, so please keep him and your family and his family in your prayers. We're joined by a very special guest tonight. He won the Wimbledon mixed doubles title with Martina Navratilova, captured the men's doubles title at the French Open with Byron Black, also was runner-up at the Australian Open. He was ranked number 1 in the world in 1994 in doubles. He's competed in 287 singles matches with 2 titles, and his double records is an outstanding 303 wins to only 186 losses with 19 career titles. He was a member of the United States Davis Cup team in 1997, and he was an All-American at Stanford, winning a national title in 1990. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Stark.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. We're really honored to have you here. After the debate, we're going to have a Q&A with Jonathan about his career. Tonight's debate is who was the greatest tennis rivalry. We're going to be doing male and female. And we've narrowed it down to what we feel was our top 3 for the debate tonight. And as always, we'll pick a winner at the end of the show. So just like in life, it's ladies first. And representing our first one, Navratilova and Everett, is Brian King.
All right, so we have Martina Navratilova come out of Czechoslovakia. We have Chris Everett, who came out of the United States. Navratilova, she had a wicked lefty serve, and she at one point she defected from Czechoslovakia to come to the United States. At that time, Czechoslovakia was under the iron fists of Russia, the whole deal. So she comes over, focuses on tennis, and this rivalry was a great one. 15 years it went. It went from 1973 to 1988. So it started out pretty one-sided. Everett pretty much dominated. She won the first 16 of 20 matches. But then over time, Navratilova, she was able to get her figured out. And it ended up, when it was all said and done, the head-to-head ended up being 43-37 in favor of Navratilova. So, you can imagine that, after those first 20 matches or so, it was very highly towards Navratilova after that. They matched up in Grand Slams 22 times. It was 14-8. In finals, it was 10-4 Navratilova. In 3 set matches, though, matches that that went that distance, 15-14 Everett. In the French Open on the clay was definitely favored Everett. She was 7-2 against Martina, and U.S. Open, it was 6-4 in favor of Everett. Australia 3-2. Wimbledon 9-3. And the Wimbledon grass at 9-3. It was Navratilova. But in tour events, it was completely even at 26-26. Everett, as far as her career goes, she was the first to win 1,000 singles matches. First to ever do it. Navratilova, she still holds the record for 9 Wimbledon titles. She also has 177 doubles titles, which is just tremendous. Like I said, it was a 15-year rivalry, and from 1981 to 1985, between the two of them, they won 15 consecutive Grand Slam titles. So they were on top at that point in time. And from 82 to 87, of the 24 Grand Slam matches, there was only 3 others that won. All the other 21 during that period of time was all either Martina or Chris Evert. So this rivalry was really something else. So I'm gonna let some of the other guys chime in about it now.
They played it 80 times. I mean, that is an insane number. You know, you mentioned something that I'm going to bring up a lot tonight in most of these is the advantage on clay as opposed to grass. I mean, Everett was better on the clay and the hard courts. Martina was, better on grass, indoor carpet type things. But, Everett had the speed, the footwork, the super intelligent out there, strong backhand. Martina, very fast-paced serve that threw a lot of people off their game at times. Had a volley style type of play, especially not in the youngest days, but towards the middle days of her. Those two really, they built the game for women's tennis, in my opinion. Jonathan, you played with Martina, so you got firsthand knowledge on this one. What do you think of these two?
Well, I mean, it's such an interesting rivalry because they contrast each other so well. You have Martina who came from Czechoslovakia, like Brian said, and then Chrissy from the U.S. and Martina lefty, Chrissy righty. Martina was one of the first female athletes to come out. Chrissy was like the all-American girl. So there are just so many differences between the way they played. Martina was a serve and volleyer. Chrissy was the ultimate baseliner, like you said, great backhand, super quick. Martina was one of the first female athletes to really bring fitness, I think, to the game a little bit. She was super strong. She really watched her diet. So it just was such and playing somebody 80 times is just insane. I can't even imagine that. I mean, I don't even know who the person I played the most, but it would not even come close to that, obviously. So, competing against someone 80 times and having it be so close, 43 to 37 is really amazing. So, I can remember growing up watching these two at Wimbledon, at the French. I mean, it just is amazing. And from my perspective, I felt real lucky to be able to play with Martina at Wimbledon. It was a real honor. And what a rivalry they've had.
From everything that I've read, it says that despite all that, they were still friends. Can you vouch for that?
I think they were. They're both really nice people, competed well, and I honestly think they were. Yeah, I would vouch for it. I don't have firsthand knowledge, but I would vouch for that. No Martina and I've met Chrissy a bunch, but they're both really nice people.
Yeah, I saw an interview not long ago, and with Everett and Everett side by side, and they were friendly, but they were kind of giving like little digs at each other too, which was kind of like, it's kind of cool because you could tell that there's still like that little bit of a rivalry edge even now, even this many years later.
Yeah.
Another fact I left out also was that from 75, November of 75 to August of 87, one of those two was number one, all but 23 weeks in that span of time. That's just amazing how long that rivalry, just how long that the greatness of both of them was, we're talking about over a 12-year span. That's amazing.
They dominated.
That is incredible. Kevin, go ahead. You look like you had something you want to say.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's impressive about Everett is she made her debut at 16. Made it all the way to the semifinals. And taking down Billie Jean King, if I'm not mistaken. But the two of them, they definitely had different attitudes. I guess, Martina could sometimes be a loose cannon, and some have compared her to Mcenroe at times, where she's actually had screamed at the chair a couple times, or she'll crack jokes when things started getting tight. Kind of like, I think the pressure may have gotten to her a little bit from what I was reading up on, but Everett was a little bit more calm, relaxed. But I mean, they faced each other 14 times in Grand Slam finals, and Everett lost 10 of those. So 10-4. I don't know if you had mentioned that, Brian. 10-4 in the Grand Slam finals between the two.
Right.
Martina was ahead, and so that shows me right there, though, that Everett could crack under pressure in the big games.
Do we know how many of those were at Wimbledon?
Good question.
It would just be interesting.
Yeah. It was 9-3 in favor of Martina at Wimbledon.
At Wimbledon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Martina won the big games, but Everett was more calm and relaxed and kept herself in control, was mentally a little bit better prepared. But Mcenroe was a loose cannon too, and he won a bunch too, and it worked out for both of them, Martina and Mcenroe. So.
Well, and with Martina, you have to wonder if she would have became as good as she did become if not for Everett, because she was losing to Everett at the beginning and she couldn't stand it. And that is what really made her, become more athletic, work on her game even more, and pushed her even harder, because she was sick of losing to Everett. That competitive edge that a professional athlete has. You see it in like Tom Brady, he hates losing more than he likes winning, So Martina definitely had that. So
that's a good point, Michael. Brian, I was surprised what you said. What was it? She lost like 16 out of 20 times or something the first time they played, Martina.
That's right. Yeah. And I was going to ask you, do you happen to know, was there some sort of adjustment that she made that Martina made to get better against Everett, or was it just sort of figuring out her game?
I don't know, but I think Michael's point, I think it might be the fitness thing a little bit. I do think maybe she got stronger, I don't know at what point she became kind of this, she was a beast. I mean, she was strong, and she really made fitness a big part of it. So I think that might be it. And losing to somebody, 16 out of 20 times is gonna spur you on, especially if you have the heart of a champion like she obviously does.
Right. Okay, let's move on to Steffi Graf versus Monica Seles. I drew the short straw on that one, so I'm representing those two. Let me switch my notes over to them. Sorry about that. So I'll just give a little individual stats first for each. Steffi Graf has an 88.7 win percentage, and that's even better than what Serena Williams has. Serena Williams is only at 85.2. So that's an impressive stat all in itself. She's got 107 titles, 900 wins, 7 Wimbledon titles, 22 Grand Slams total, and she's the only, it might have changed recently, but I'm pretty sure she's still the only Golden Slam winner for the women, which means she won all 4 major tournaments and the Olympic gold medal all in that same year period. She also has 11 double titles out there. And Billie Jean King is quoted as saying that Steffi Graf is the greatest women's player of all time. And in 1999, the Associated Press named her the greatest of the 20th century, excuse me. So that's a little individual stuff about Graf. Now on Seles, her win percentage is 82.9. So it is lower, but it's still very good win percentage. She has 53 titles. She's the youngest ever to win the French Open. She was 16 years old. She's got 10 Grand Slams, and 8 of those came before she was 20 years old, which is a key age for Monica Seles. For a lot of our viewers, if you haven't watched, don't know a lot about tennis, she was stabbed in a match in Germany. I'm going to get into that in a minute. But she also has a bronze Olympic medal, 6 career double titles, and players and historians say, if not for the stabbing incident, that she could have been the greatest of all time for the women. So her career is kind of a what if, even though it was a Hall of Fame career regardless. So now head to head, this rivalry went from basically 1989 to 1999, and it was really for best player of the decade in the especially the early 90s. Celis, she was lefty, powerful shot, had precision. Graf probably had the best forehand in the business, especially during that time, and a very powerful serve. Grand Slams, so Graf leads 6-4 over Celis on the Grand Slams, and they were 3-3 in the finals at Grand Slams. So, and then on the tour, you got Graf leading 4-1. But from 1990 to 1993, they traded the #1 spot in the world back and forth. And up until 1993, head-to-head, they were pretty much very even. But, as I mentioned earlier, 1993 at the tournament in Germany, a crazy fan, supposedly Steffi Graf fan, stabbed Celis in the back during a match. And that somehow that nut job didn't even get jail time. Don't get me started on that, especially, for what I do for a living. But Celis was out for almost 2 years when that occurred. And upon her return, she was good, but she was never as good as she was before. She was never as dominant again. And she'd only beat Graf. She only beat Steffi Graf one more time after that. But both are Hall of Famers. Celis is ranked 19th, and Graf is ranked 3rd on the all-time greatest tennis players by the Tennis Channel. And so that's what I got on them. Did you, by any chance, Jonathan, did you play either of them in doubles, mixed doubles at any point?
No, they didn't play too much. That's interesting. You said their doubles resumes. I don't remember them playing much doubles. Definitely not mixed doubles. So no, I never had the opportunity to be on the court with them. Their careers kind of, you mentioned their rivalries like 89 to 90. So that was about right when I came on the tour, about 90, 91. So I had the pleasure of at Grand Slams, being kind of watching their careers and watching them play and so forth. But no, to answer your question, I did not. I didn't ever get on the court with either of them.
So the question I wanted to ask you most tonight is about this particular rivalry, especially since you were a player, you were ranked, you know how all that system went. When Monica Seles came back from the stabbing, they elected to have her come back, that kind of like tied as #1 in the world. And from what I've heard, a lot of players weren't happy about that. Others were, but a lot weren't. Did you have an opinion on that at all, or what were your thoughts?
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I would, looking back, I would have no problem with that. I mean, she deserves it. I mean, geez, she got stabbed on the court. She was dominating the game. I was surprised you said she was only 20 years old, because she did, she won her first Grand Slam at 16. So, I mean, 16 to 20, she was dominant and she was good. She ripped the ball, 2 hands, both sides. She was a lefty, but she was 2 hands, both sides, and just hit the crap out of the ball every time, and was a competitor. So when you said she got stabbed at 20, she basically had a 4-year career, because as you said, she did not come back at all as she was. She was not the same player, and rightfully so. She's sitting on a changeover drinking water, and some dude comes up and stabs her. I mean, that's pretty intense.
Yeah. Brian or Kevin, you guys want to
I'll jump in.
Anything here? Go ahead.
Yeah. What could have been if she didn't get stabbed? I mean, it could have been completely different. But I mean, if you look at how they split their games on each court, as well as overall games, the finals, fortunately, it's the Graf leads in every category except for playing on clay courts. They tied. Grand Slam finals, they tied. But every other category, Graf won. Graf won on hard courts, grass courts, carpet courts, year-end championships, Grand Slams, all finals, all matches. And I mean, so Celis's career was, she was only in it, what, like 7, 9 years, 10 years with Graf. And then she got stabbed in what year, did you say?
93.
Yeah, so then she missed 94. Between 93 and 96, Graf was ranked number 1. Could that have been different if Celis didn't get stabbed? I mean, it might have been. I will say Celis was ranked number 2 in 96. So obviously, she was still,
Yeah, good point.
still not too bad to still be ranked second the following year. But then
Right.
after that, she started to dwindle. I mean, she was 5th, 6th. I mean, she was still top 10 all the way up until the end of 2002. Then she dropped down to 60 in 2003.
Well, I mean, she was ranked second, but she came back as first, so she would have had to work her way down anyways. So.
Right, but I'm saying when she came back, she came back tied as first, which actually before she got stabbed, she was ranked 8th in 93. Then she came back tied for first. 96, she was second. She went 5th, 6th, 6th, 4th, 10th, 7th, and then 6th. So the next like 7 years, she was still in the top 10. So she didn't deteriorate that much, but it definitely, I think she would have given Graf a little bit more run for her money if that stabbing didn't happen. And maybe the numbers wouldn't be so swayed towards Graf on all the stats.
John, oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say I agree with that, but I mean, thinking back on Steffi and hearing her stats, I mean, winning the Grand Slam plus the gold medal, Steffi was amazing. She was so dominant and such an incredible athlete, and just moved her movement and her athleticism on the court a little bit like Martina, but even at a higher level, in my opinion. She comparing anybody to Steffi is pretty tough. You know, it's interesting. She never hit over her backhand. She did not hit a topspin backhand at any time. She sliced it every time. And then she had that unbelievable forehand. So anyway, just how she could get away with that. You think about today's game, it's pretty amazing.
Well, one last question on those two. With Celis being a lefty. So I know in other sports, being a lefty can mess up a lot of other players. Is that the same in tennis, that you're kind of reversing how you play when you play against a lefty?
100%. The serve comes in different. And what is it? I think 10% of society is left-handed or something. So, most of the time you're playing righties. And so it does change everything. And I think the serve is one of the biggest advantages.
Okay.
Just because it's coming in opposite, they hit that lefty serve to your backhand, they hit their forehand to your backhand. I mean, so I don't know if it's an advantage, but it definitely changes it a bit for all righties.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Lindsey Davenport versus Venus Williams. Kevin, you have that one. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, this is probably one of more of our closer rivalries when it comes down to head-to-head stuff. Now, individually, I mean, it's pretty lopsided, but actual head-to-head matches, probably one of our closer rivals. So, I mean, you have Lindsey Davenport. She was a baseline player. Her game was mainly built around ground stroke. She had a great backhand, two-handed backhand, great serve. She hit crazy placement. Like, she could place the ball pretty much wherever she wanted. Her forehand was described almost as good as Steffi Graf's. She's one of the cleanest ball strikers in the history of the WTA. And she had the reputation of being one of the hardest hitters. Now, she did lack some speed and mobility around the court. And I'd say that was probably one of her biggest weaknesses when it came down to her. But when it came to individual accolades, I mean, her record, she was 753 wins to 194 losses, 55 titles. She had been ranked she had been ranked number 1 on 8 different occasions for a total of 98 weeks. Had won the Australian Open, Wimbledon once, US Open once, 4 finals. She did win Olympic gold medal for women's singles in '96 back in Atlanta. She had appeared in doubles tournaments. She won the French Open, the Wimbledon and US Open. Doubles. She was also on some 15 competitions, won the Fed Cup 3 years with her on it, and the Hopman Cup. So, I mean, she has some good individual accolades. Her record is pretty good. Her doubles record, she had actually been ranked #1 as well in doubles, 97. Her doubles record, she was 387, 16, 38 titles, doubles. Switch over to Venus. Venus's individual accolades heavily outweigh Davenport. Venus was a baseline player. She attacked the court all over. She is well adapted to grass. That was pretty much, I think, her most comfortable area as a player in grass, which Wimbledon is played on grass. She won 5 titles. She became a very skillful volleyer. She had a long arm span. She had agility around the net, great coverage. She also holds the record for fastest serve in 3 different tournaments. She actually served up to 129 miles per hour. That's a pretty wicked serve. If you look at her individual stats, she had 812 wins, 256 losses as singles, 49 titles. She was ranked #1 starting in 2002. I think she was only #1 for 19 weeks. I think competition around the time when she was playing in the women's tour was a little bit heavier, especially when you have her sister in there, Davenport, couple. Won Wimbledon 5 times, like I said before. She won the US Open twice. She actually defeated Davenport in Wimbledon twice. Went on to win other tournaments, Grand Slam Cup, Tour Finals. Has 4 gold medals, 3 in doubles, 1 in singles. She also got a silver in the mixed doubles. Her mixed record, though, 28-8 with 2 career titles. She won the Australian Open, French Open for mixed. Regular doubles, 22 titles, 185-36 for record. She won the Australian Open 4 times, French Open twice, Wimbledon 6 times for doubles, US Open twice. So individual accolades, she destroys them, but when you go head-to-head, Davenport actually leads 14-13. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That key on the head-to-head, though, Davenport does lead 14-13, but in the finals, it's actually 3-0 Venus. So that changes. My biggest issue with this particular rivalry, it was a great rivalry, but I don't even think it's the best known rivalry for both of them. You mentioned Serena versus Venus. I believe you mentioned it. Granted, that was a one-sided rivalry, but I think people kind of remember Venus more for her rivalry with her sister than they do with Davenport. And Davenport even had a pretty good rivalry. I think it was with Capriati, if I'm recalling correctly. But Venus is always compared to Serena. So anything
Serena
Venus
dominates her every time.
I understand that, but she's always compared with her. So everything is always going to come back rivalry-wise, Venus versus Serena. So
that's only because it's siblings.
I'm just making my argument as to why they shouldn't be the #1 women's rivalry. I'm just throwing that out there.
Too lopsided.
And Davenport she's a great player, but she wasn't dominant for a long extended time period. Like Venus was definitely dominant a lot longer. Gosh, Serena's been dominant for probably 20 years now, it seems like.
Davenport held #1 longer than
did you
Venus.
98 weeks, Kevin? 98 weeks she held #1?
Yeah, on 8 different. It was a stretch between 8 different occasions where she hit #1. But she held it for like 80 weeks longer than Venus did.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, that was the thing that surprised me the most, was the difference of at #1, 19 weeks for Venus and 98 for Lindsey, which is such a discrepancy. But I agree with you. I think the competition with Serena added a little bit. Lindsey must have snuck in there between like Steffi and kind of snuck in there before the Williams girls came on the scene. These girls, as far as the way they play, I mean, they're just so similar. I mean, they played the same way. They're both over 6 feet tall. They just beat the ball. I think Venus was a better athlete, and You know, could move a little bit better, maybe volley better. Although Lindsey was a really good volleyer, good doubles player. Actually played mixed doubles against her at Wimbledon at one time. Can't remember the year, but I remember playing against her maybe a couple times in mixed doubles. But you know, both great players, obviously.
Did you
Brian,
play against Venus too? I'm sorry, real quick. Did you play against Venus too?
I never did play mix against Venus. Surprisingly, I'm surprised by that, but I never did. Yeah, because they both played a lot of doubles. You know, as I said, Steffi and Monica didn't play a lot of doubles. Martina obviously played a ton of doubles, but these two played a lot. These two played a lot. Yeah.
Brian, anything you wanted to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I sort of just echo your point is that this rivalry doesn't seem like it stands out as kind of the way that the other, the previous two we mentioned, just as far as like, like jump out from like a historical standpoint. But it is interesting that Davenport was actually a little bit of a better had more accomplishments as far as, like you said, the weeks at number one. And she seemed to have Venus's number, unless if it was a grand slam, like you said. I mean, but you see that in sports sometimes where it's just certain people that you just don't match up that well against, and it kind of seems like that's the way it was for Venus, when she went against Davenport.
Yeah.
Okay.
Venus was a little Venus compared to Serena, and that's why Serena got her. And Lindsey, I think, maybe got her a little bit. Well, it was only one match. What was it? 14-13. Lindsey was ahead. Lindsey was just a little more consistent. Venus could have those matches where she just would miss a lot of balls, and I think she was a little inconsistent. But I think that's why she was better on the grass, because she could use her serve a little bit more, and her movement came into play.
When you were at Wimbledon, did you ever like sit and watch any of the other matches? Like, did you sit and watch any of these players play in any of the matches?
As a player, you don't really do that too much. You might catch it on TV or something, but you're not sitting in the stands really doing that too often. Yeah. I remember when I was in the juniors, I remember sitting and watching Lendl and Villander playing the finals of the French. I remember I sat there and watched the whole match live, which was pretty cool.
All right. Well, before we move on to the men, just a reminder for everyone to check out Arena Eats. Log on to the website, arenaeats.app, for the ultimate fan experience at your favorite sports venue. Arena Eats mobile app, pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order? Now, let's move on to the men's. Our first one is John McEnroe versus Bjorg. Brian, did you get that?
Yeah, that's fine. Right. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I'm pumped up about this rivalry. I was born, a little bit too late to really have experienced this one. But looking back on it, I'll tell you what, it was really something for the history of tennis. I mean, you had Borg, who was like the Iceman. He didn't show emotion while he was on the court. If you look sort of back into his history when he was in Sweden, he had some problems with that when he was in junior tennis, and with these outbursts and sorts of things, and he was suspended for 6 months from the Swedish junior tennis, and he got with his coach, and his coach sort of worked through that with him and got him to where he became more of a calm player, and he even took it to the extreme where there was times where he would just hardly even speak at all while he was on the court. Now, John McEnroe, polar opposite. They called him fire, and that was, he was any sort of emotion that he had while he was on the court, any disappointment, any triumph, anything, he was letting you know about it. You knew exactly how John McEnroe felt at any time while he was there. Plenty of outbursts. There was a famous one during the Jimmy Connors match in 1980. Disputing a ball that went out. It was called out that he didn't believe was out. So I mean, he was just a fiery player. They were very opposite when it came to the way that they played. McEnroe being a lefty, McEnroe liked to crash the net. Borg was more of a baseline player. Borg had a wicked double-handed backhand, which was not really too common prior to him. When he came into the circuit. So that was something that was that was new. Now head to head, these guys they only faced each other 14 times. It seems like it was more than that. But when they face each other, it was so important for the history of tennis. So head to head, 7-7. They got the better of each other an equal amount of times. In the Grand Slams, 3 for McEnroe, 1 for Borg. And so now you get to the 1980 Wimbledon. I mean, they made a movie about this. It was so big. Everything leading up to it. John McEnroe, he's going out there. He's getting booed by the fans. They don't like his conduct. They don't like his outburst. Borg, he's going for his 5th consecutive win there, which was just unbelievable to be able to pull that off. And Borg he's dealing with all this pressure and everything to try and win this. You know, he got even to the point where his heart even really in it. You know, but he was such a competitor. You know, and so they finally meet in the finals in 1980, and McEnroe set 1. He goes through. I mean, it's really quickly. He wins that first set, and it's looking like, wow, what's going on with Borg? Well, then the old Borg comes back. Set 2, set 3. He wins both of those. Then McEnroe in set 4, which this is like one of the most legendary sets, I mean, in tennis history. Set 4. It goes, we end up with a tiebreaker that lasts for 20 minutes, and McEnroe saves championship point 5 times during this set, which is amazing. So he wins that set. It goes to 5, and Borg ends up beating him 8-6 in the final set. And it's like, it was almost like it was a victory in a sense for McEnroe, because it was like, this was McEnroe's first time, you know, on the big stage like this. And he went, you know, blow for blow with a guy who, you know, was going to be a 5-time champion. And it was just one of those, you know, places, you know, you sort of check mark in tennis history. It was like one of just the great moments. The following year, 1981 Wimbledon, McEnroe is able to get his revenge. He's able to beat Borg in 4 sets. And Borg at this point, you know, he was going for that 6th straight Wimbledon. He couldn't get it. And the pressure was just immense. It was just so much for him. He was like, you know, the way he held his emotions in, it was just so intense that finally he just let it go. And he walked out. He wasn't even there for the final ceremonies in 1981. And he walked out and he retired. He eventually came back some, but he was just never really the same. By 1983, he was out of tennis. So this rivalry, it only went from 78 to 81. So it was very short, but just for what it brought to the game of tennis, putting it on the forefront. I mean, you had your villain, you know, McEnroe, you had your hero Borg. You just had an amazing dynamic that really sort of it brought so many extra fans into tennis and really put a great focus on the sport.
You mentioned that head to head 7-7, right? That's what you said.
That's right.
Just to even more tell you how even they are. At invitationals, they were 4-4 against each other, and the only time there's a difference is in exhibitions, where Borg is 2-1.
Right.
So there's only 1 win difference. That is definitely the closest rivalry that we have going on today. Even I know Capriati or Davenport and Venus Williams was 1 different, but these guys were on another planet compared to those two. And just like you mentioned, the opposite of their games. And surprisingly, you know, McEnroe has said that, you know, they're really good friends, and
They are. Yes.
They never argued off the court, according to him. Which,
Yeah.
you know, McEnroe's a big arguer. But John, I know you played McEnroe. I found him 1 time. Is it only once?
Yeah, 1 time. One
Okay.
time.
And Borg was already gone by the time you started. But what do you think of this rivalry?
Well, I could talk this one for an American growing up. You know, I was born in 71, so these guys, you know, what you mentioned, you know, 1980, 81. So I'm 9, 10 years old. I can remember. I remember those matches, and then I watched the movie recently, Fire and Ice, that HBO put on, which reminded me of that tiebreaker you were talking about, Brian. I think Mac won at 19-17 in the fourth set, and then
Right. Yeah.
that Borg actually came back, and I think he was down a break point, and he talks about, if he'd have lost that first game of the fifth set, he probably would have lost. Anyway, he pulled it out. But these guys, as you said, these guys kind of put tennis on the map. I mean, I feel like Connors was in there as well, but these guys, just their contrasting styles. Again, you have a lefty and a righty. Mac was more of a serve and volleyer, came in a lot, super volatile. Borg was just ice, as you said, didn't say a word. Two-handed backhand, which kind of, Connors was a two-handed backhand, but Borg kind of, brought that to the table as well. Super good. Both of them were amazing athletes. Mac had all the touch. Supposedly, guys I talked to with Borg, they said he had like world-class sprinter speed. They say he's probably arguably the fastest male player of all time. So just what they brought to the court, and it's just so perfect that it was 7-7, and that there was 50% each. So I mean, these guys, I could talk about these guys forever. Michael, when you mentioned I played him at the Canadian Open, it was I think the quarterfinals of the Canadian Open, and I was like 22, 23. I was pretty pretty full of myself, playing some good tennis, and kind of an odd. I knew Mac, fairly well, but to play him in singles in a big match was interesting for me, to say the least. But he was ahead 6-0, 4-0, and I was serving 40-15, and I hit an ace up the middle, and he goes bananas for like 5 minutes. He's up 6-0, 4-1. They're changing sides, and I know he does it just to entertain the crowd. He knows the serve was in, and he's just putting on a show for 5 minutes and going nuts. And I finally said, like, let's just get this over with so I could get off the court, Mac. And he beat me 0-1 and put me in my place pretty quick. But he's one of my idols. Both those guys are two of my idols growing up, and kind of a reason why I played tennis.
That rivalry could have been even more, but Borg retired at 26, I think. So
amazing. Yeah,
pretty young.
Mac took a break. Kind of Borg's retiring kind of seemed to kind of made Mac kind of lose his motivation to play. Took a break, and then he came back, obviously. But both of them, especially Borg, but both of them by 25, 26 was their best tennis was done. All
right, let's move on to Agassi Sampras. Kevin, you got that one.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something too on Borg and McEnroe to just kind of piggyback off of what you said about the friendships and everything. I'm pretty sure that John was actually the best man in Bjorg's wedding. That's how close of friends they actually became.
Right, yeah, that's true.
The movie, Borg McEnroe, Shia LaBeouf played McEnroe, did a great job. But that was a good movie, and it really showed a good picture of both, showed the ups and downs during that Wimbledon tournament. Then it kind of touched base on. But also one thing is McEnroe led in the finals too, 5-4. I don't know if that was mentioned.
Okay.
Slight edge when it came to the final matches.
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
All right.
So yeah, Sampras and Agassi. These are two household names. I mean, who doesn't know Sampras and Agassi? They pretty much think American players in tennis. You think Agassi and Sampras in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, they were pretty much.
And Clark.
I'm sorry? But yeah, so Agassi, I mean, he was an interesting player. He played pretty much the same on all surfaces. Like, most players would have to adapt their game to the different surface that they were playing. Agassi played the same across the board. And he played on clay in a typical, like, hard court manner, virtually on the baseline. You hit through the ball, trying to control the middle of the court. He didn't do much sliding at all. He helped revolutionize the return of the serve. He wasn't one of the most athletic players on tour, but he had some extreme, like, quick footwork, reflexes. Relied on the take of the ball very early on the return of serve from the baseline. Sampras, he played a little bit differently. He was more conventional, all-court player. Served and volleyed on grass virtually every point, but rallied on his own serve. You know, when it comes down to individual accolades, you know, again, this is a little lopsided. Agassi, he had a good career. He won 60 tournaments. Majority of them were on hard court. 46 of those, actually, 60 tournaments that he won were on hard court. He won an Olympic gold medal in '96, which was here in Atlanta. He was one of 7 men to win 4 major titles on all surfaces. Won the Australian Open 4 times, US Open twice, Wimbledon in '92, French Open in '99. He was number 1 for a total of 101 weeks in his career. Finished year-end number 1 in 1999. He won 18 Super 9 Masters tournaments, including 6 in Miami, 3 in Cincinnati. He also won the year-end World Championships on them. 90. His overall record was 870, 74, and that span was over 20 years. Sampras, he won more titles. He actually won 64 titles. Half of those were on hard court. He holds many records. He was number 1 for 286 weeks. That is 185 more weeks than Agassi. That's pretty impressive. He was number 1 at the end of the year, 6 years in a row from 1993 to '98. Won the Wimbledon 7 times, US Open 5 times, played in 8 finals. He won the Australian Open twice, won the year-end championship 5 times, won 11 of the Super 9 Masters, including Miami and Cincinnati 3 times, the Italian Open. Won in 1994, he won tournaments on all surfaces. Clay, hard court, grass, indoor carpet. His overall record was 762 wins, 222 losses over a 15-year period. So he had less wins, but he also had 5-year less years in his career. But when it comes to head-to-head, they played each other 34 times, and Sampras leads 20-14. You guys want to throw out some of the other stats, I'll leave some of those for you. 20-14 overall, Sampras leads. And Sampras also made about $10 million more than Agassi.
I was very surprised to hear it was only 20-14. That's it always seemed like that Sampras was Agassi's kryptonite, you know, when I would watch them play. These two, they put tennis on the map for me. Like, I wasn't into tennis until these two came around. I remember just being a kid and watching their matches. Like, I think it was probably because of Agassi. Agassi was kind of, I don't want to say Dennis Rodman of tennis, but he definitely was a star. Image is everything. I mean, that was pretty famous in the 90s. You know, Sampras was more of a quiet, humble, kind of stay out of the limelight type person. Even he did marry a movie star, but you know, obviously Agassi dated Brooke Shields for a long time. He's married to Steffi Graf now, who we just talked about earlier, of course. What I wanted to ask you, John, about this, I think I did my research correctly. So your racket was a Yonex Titanium 400, right, for a while?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you switched to the Head Blue Radical 260?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to get your opinion on this, because a lot of people were ripping on Agassi because he used that 260 racket, and he blamed that for his losing streak. So did it cause a losing streak for you, or was Agassi just having a little sour grapes?
I think it's sour grapes. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I never heard that story. I never heard that, but you know, he was famous for the Prince Graf fight. I don't know if you guys remember that one, but he used the Prince Graf fight forever. But yeah, I never heard the story about the rackets. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a true story too. So, but I know you played them both. Did you feel like one was better than the other?
You know, Andre for me was tougher for me. You know, Kevin, you brought up his return of serve. You know, my serve was my biggest weapon, so Andre kind of negated that, and so he was a tough matchup for me. And then Pete was, you know, I played Pete, I believe 3 times. Every time it was like super close, but just like always, he pulled it out.
Four times. Played him 4 times.
Was it 4 times? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I never got either of them, which is a big bummer. I would have loved to say I beat one of those guys. I mean, like you said, I mean, for me, I mean, those were the two greatest. They're both my age, basically, and you know, they dominated the game for years. And what was Pete? 286 years at #1. I mean, that's pretty incredible. And you know, he arguably has the greatest single shot of all time with his serve, especially his second serve. And then you know, Andre, you talk about, you know, probably the purest ball striker of all time. You know, he put the ball in the middle of the strings just about every time he hit the ball, and he took the ball super early. So you're talking about two of the most talented, greatest players of all time right there. And what's interesting with these rivalries is how, you know, their personalities are different, their games are different. It seems like a common theme with all these rivalries. So I find, you know, as you're talking about them or thinking about them, that's one common theme, which I don't know, it's kind of interesting.
Agassi didn't try and pull that, you know, between the legs shot on you, did he?
Oh yeah,
He's
sure.
kind of famous, right?
No, he was very respectful, very nice guy. You know, his image thing was a little overblown. He was definitely, image was everything, but super good guy, very respectful on the court, and both of them are good guys.
And he brought something to tennis that really had never been brought before, and that was sex appeal.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the women flocked to watch Agassi play. He had that long hair. You know, obviously he's bald now, but that happens to all of us. But yeah, the women flocked to see that guy. So
he was kind of the first to take you know, to take the marketing over the top, and he did it. You know, it's funny. He had some flair, man. I met him the first time we were playing a national junior tournament in Florida. I was 13. He was probably 14. His fingernails were all painted red. He had eyeshadow on. He had mascara on. I mean, this guy, he was a different cat. He definitely went for his image.
Kevin, you mentioned how much more money Sampras won. That was just in tennis. I bet you if we went and looked back at endorsements, I bet you that's a lot closer with you know, Agassi catch up on that.
Possibly. Well, and Agassi also wrote a book, and kind of touching on you guys talking about his image. I mean, he admitted to some stuff in that book about how he failed some drug tests and was grieved by that takes a lot to, you know, write that and publish that and put that out there in the public, knowing about how he is so, like, about his image, tarnish it. Some people said that actually tarnished his legacy a little bit, but I actually disagree with that. For him to come out and admit it on his own, I think that actually speaks about character.
It was a pretty good book. I think what was it called? Open. I think it was called Open.
Yeah, I believe so.
It was an open book. I mean, it was pretty interesting to read some of that stuff, and competing against him and hearing some of that stuff is kind of interesting because you had no clue. You had no clue. He was pretty private on tour, actually. So.
All right, let's move on to our final rivalry for the men. It's Raphael Nadal versus Roger Federer. I got this one. I apologize ahead of time. I don't have as much research on it as I should. This was actually going to be Brett's, but you know, Brett's under the weather, so had to pick up the slack on this one. So Nadal, he's got. I'm always into stats, but he's got 83.3 win percentage, 86 titles, 11 double titles, and 999 wins. So he's one away from that big 1,000. I'm sure that'll come at the very next tournament he plays. He's got a gold medal in singles and doubles from the Olympics. He's got 20 Grand Slams. This guy is unbeatable on clay. Okay, I can't stress that enough. When it comes to clay, you're not beating Nadal. And he has the record for most Grand Slam titles won without losing a set with 4. So that's pretty impressive. And he has the most titles in a single Grand Slam tournament. That's the French Open, which of course is on clay. And he's only the second male to receive the Golden Slam. Andre Agassi was the other one. Nadal is very aggressive type player, plays behind the baseline a lot. Good court coverage, definitely can get from side to side really quick. Strong counter shot. He can definitely return things. Federer, he's got a win percentage at 82.1. He's 39 years old now, and he is still not on the very top of his game, but still top 5% of the world, which is just amazing. He's playing against 20-year-olds, and he's still pretty much, winning most of his matches. He's got 103 titles, 8 double titles, 1,242 wins. He's got a gold medal in doubles, a silver in singles from the Olympics, 20 Grand Slams. And he's got the record for being number 1 at 310 weeks, and that's including 237 consecutive weeks. He's got a record 8 men's Wimbledon titles, and he was he's a baseliner and a volleyer, exceptional footwork, maybe the greatest footwork of all time, and his shot accuracy, he may be the most accurate shooter of all time too. But head to head, surprisingly, Nadal leads 24-16 in their head-to-head matchups, and 10-4 in Grand Slams. Nadal is leading. Now, if you look deeper into that, on clay, Nadal is 14-2 against Federer. I said earlier how good he is on clay. If you remove clay, Federer actually has the better head-to-head record. And Federer is the only player to beat Nadal in a finals during a whole decade on clay, and he did it twice. So that does say something. So these two were really like a battle of the surfaces, whatever surface they played on, if it was clay, hard court, grass, turf, whatever, played a big factor in who won these matches. Some things that kind of hurt this. Nadal, he's had constant injuries throughout his years. That's slowed some of there would have been more matches between these two. So that's hurt it a little bit. But their 2008 Wimbledon match, it's lauded as like the greatest match ever. It went 4 hours and 48 minutes. That's a pretty long match. And they're considered by many writers and players to be the 2 greatest players of all time. So, John, I got to ask you ever been in a match that was basically 5 hours long?
I actually, I think I played a match at the Australian Open that was over 5 hours. Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun.
I can imagine. Was it a doubles or a singles?
Singles match. Single.
Wow.
That's even worse because then you're by yourself.
Exactly. It was hot. I remember I went into a full body cramp after the match. It was good, and I lost. Dang it! Damn it!
Now, you were
playing the ball. That'd be the worst.
Yeah, you were retired before these two came around, right?
I always, Federer was definitely on the tour. You said he's 39, I'm 49, so he was around. I knew Roger a bit. Rafa was definitely not around. But These guys, I mean, you said it all. I mean, these guys are insane. I mean, I think they are the two greatest players of all time. Federer might be the most talented player of all time. Rafa, if you combine his talent with his intensity and just his physicality that he plays with tennis has never seen anything like it. I went back to Wimbledon, took the family back to Wimbledon last year, and got a chance to watch Rafa live. I watched him the whole match, and I was blown away just in person watching him play, how physical he is and how hard he works on every ball. It's pretty amazing. And I think his 13 French Opens is, I think, one of the greatest achievements in all of sports. I don't think that'll ever be broken.
Well, and other than these two and Djokovic, I feel like they don't have the competition that some of the other rivalries we've talked about that they would have to play. So I think that inflates their numbers a bit. Now they're really great. Obviously, they're two of the greatest players of all time. But I don't feel like they had as hard of a competition. You know, back in your day, there was Agassi, there was Sampras, there was Michael Chang. You know, Mcenroe was coming to the end, but he was still there. You know, I feel like there were just better competition in the early 90s, mid 90s, 80s than what there is today, at least on the men's side. The women's side is loaded, but what do you feel about that?
Well, you also could look at it. You're talking about three of the greatest players of all time, you know, with Roger, Rafa, and Djokovic. I mean, but you're right. Nobody has been able, you know, Murray did it a little bit. Wawrinka's done it a little bit, where they've kind of tried to get their paws in there a little bit. But I heard a stat today that in 2006, those three were 1, 2, and 3 in the world, and in 2020, those three are 1, 2, and 3 in the world. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
That is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, echo your point. I mean, what jumps out to me is the longevity. I mean, these guys have been able to be at it for so long, and I mean, part of me wonders, you know, if these guys were back in the 80s and the 70s, would they still have gotten that? You know, we have a lot of modern medicine now, or these guys are able to get back from injuries. I don't know the answer to that, but it still shouldn't be, you know, slighted the fact that these guys have been able to hang around, you know, into well into their 30s like this. I mean, and still be playing at a very high level.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing it in all sports a little bit, how athletes are playing a much longer time. But yeah, I mean, compared to like what we talked about, Borg and Mac, and they were done at 26, 27 years old, and
Right, exactly.
you know, so yeah, their longevity was amazing. Andre played for a pretty long time. Andre played for almost 20 years, so that was pretty impressive as well.
I had some hope for American tennis again with Andy Roddick, but Federer just beat him down.
So did Nadal. Nadal beat him pretty good too.
Yeah. Exactly.
Roddick had that rocket serve, man.
He had a bomb, but he came up at he was a little older than these guys, but it's a tough era to play with these guys. They're tough. I agree with your point that there might not be the competition, but I don't know. These guys are amazing.
Yeah, I'll just to add real quick, like these two, I feel like they've revitalized men's tennis when they came into the fold. You know, once Sampras and Agassi were pretty much gone, I mean, like you said, Mike, you know, Sampras and Agassi pretty much brought tennis to the fold for you. Well, these two, I think, kind of revitalized it and brought it back for everybody because it was exciting to watch these two go head to head.
Yeah.
They always had great matches, big names. And I do agree with you, though, Mike, that competition wasn't anywhere near good for them as it was in the 90s.
I also feel like none of these guys are really, really vocal on the court, but they still just have a level of intimidation. You know, that when they're playing lesser opponents, it's like, oh my God, Federer, oh my God, Nadal. You know, they just have this overwhelming presence, even though they don't have to say a lot.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, before we vote, let's do our trivia question for tonight. You got to be a member of the Legacy Battle Facebook group to win, so please join. And you got to answer all 3 parts of the question as usual. If you've already won, you're still ineligible. Sorry, guys. All right, so here's tonight's question. Who was the tennis player who showed Mr. Deeds around New York City? And who was the player that married Billy Madison's girlfriend? And who was the player in the movie Pixels that was waiting in the White House with Martha Stewart? So throw your answers in the comments section. If you get all those, we'll mail your prize out. And yes, it was an Adam Sandler question night. All three of those are Adam Sandler movies.
Can you say if it's one player or three different?
It's three different.
Three different. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got one. I got one of them.
Yeah. Well, hey, you get the other two, I'll mail you out the prize. So how about that?
I'll do that. I'll do that.
All right, let's start with the women. Brian, you're in the top corner. So which of those women's rivalries? We got Everett and Navratilova, Sellis, Graf, Venus Williams, and Davenport. Who are you taking?
I'm gonna stick with Everett and Navratilova just because I feel like it kind of really put the women's tennis on the map. You know, the fact that they met 80 times and it was so close, you know, 43 to 37. I mean, I just feel like that was just an amazing rivalry that, you know, it was unfortunate with what happened to Sellis that kind of dwarfed that rivalry because that had the potential to be an Everett Navratilova rivalry, but and then you know, the one with Venus Davenport, it just didn't really seem like it was commercially sort of, I don't know, it just didn't really stand out as such a big one as compared to these two. So I'm going to go with Everett and Navratilova.
I'm going to back what you said with the Sellis Graf comment. I believe if Sellis hadn't been stabbed, her and Graf would have had probably one of the greatest rivalries for 10 years. It would have been insane, but you know, sadly that didn't happen. So as we said earlier in the show, it's the what if, and that's a common topic of what if that we've had on a lot of our shows in the past, but it's definitely a what if. So because of that, I'm going with Navratilova and Everett as well. They may be the biggest names ever in women's tennis, along with Billie Jean King. Those three made women's tennis. Like, they put it on the map. You know, we probably might not even have it today if it weren't for those three. So, or at least it wouldn't be as big as what it is today. So I'm going that. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, for once, I'm actually agreeing with you guys. I know the last, three debates, it's been me and Brett against you two. But I agree with you guys that Everett and Navratilova is the best rivalry out of the three that we had discussed. You know, I know you guys are downing on Davenport and Williams. You know, when they played each other, like, there were good matches. And, you know, 2005 Wimbledon really sticks out, where that match went about 3 hours. And you know, the record head-to-head was pretty much even. But I think I agree with you guys. I think Everett and Navratilova put Williams.
Okay. John, how about you?
Chrissy and Martina for sure. I mean, 80 matches, like you said, along with Billie Jean King, these two, you know, made women's tennis what it is today. And, you know, to play that many times, have it be so close, contrasting styles. You know, the Monica Steffi one could have been interesting, but unfortunately it was cut short. And then, you know, Venus and Lindsey, two great players, but I wouldn't put them. I would definitely put the Navratilova Everett at the top of that one.
It's a sweep, 4-0. All right,
Yeah.
let's do our vote for the men. John, we'll start with you this time for the men. Go ahead.
This one's tough. This one's really tough for me because I mean, holy moly. Do I have to choose? No, I'm teasing. I'm going to say, I am going to say Federer and Nadal. I'm going to go with Federer and Nadal. It kills me. I think all three of them, you know, Borg McEnroe for me is why I play tennis. But if you look at it purely from a tennis standpoint, numbers standpoint, what they've done for the game, you know, longevity, You know, not as much entertainment value as the other ones, but I got to go with Federer and Nadal. And Sampras Agassi, a close second, a real close second.
Brian, go ahead.
You know, even though it was short, I'm going to go with Borg Mcenroe. I don't think they're ever going to make a movie out of the other rivalries. You know, this was just a Hollywood script, you know, laid out before us. And yes, it was very short, only 14 matches, but it seems like it was longer. It seems like it was bigger. And then like I saw an interview with these two guys, and Borg said, he's like, sometimes people come to me and they think that I lost the 1980 Wimbledon, even though he won it, just because it was like everybody remembers that great tiebreaker in set 4, the McEnroe won. You know, so it's like, it's kind of weird. Like, people, you know, they don't even remember who won it, just remember how legendary it was. So I'm going to go with that one.
Okay. I'll go next, Kevin. You can finish it out after me here. But so tennis in the late 80s, like right after Borg left, McEnroe was getting up in there in age, was kind of a bit of a low point, you know, in its popularity. You know, Borg was gone, like I said. McEnroe and Connors were past their prime at that point. Ratings were dropping a bit, and revenue was down too. And I'm always big on these shows about the money and revenues. So, you know, revenues was down. So the early 80s was the high point, really, and then it dropped. And what brought it back was Agassi Sampras. And I'm not just saying that because that was what got me into tennis, but it really was what brought it back into pop culture. You know, probably more so on Agassi's side than Sampras. The rivalry obviously brought it out, but you know, Agassi was so mainstream. Some people forget how mainstream he was in the 90s. There were women coming to that sport who really never had any interest in it before. I know I was in high school at the time. Several girls were obsessed with Andre Agassi. They'd open up their lockers and you'd see pictures of Andre Agassi and his long hair in there. So, you know, it may not be the best rivalry on the court, as far as the amount of times played and the evenness, but it saved tennis, in my opinion. Men's tennis brought it out of a low point. So I'm going with Agassi and Sampras. So that's one vote for each, which means the pressure is on you, Kevin.
Good times. Wow, I've never had a deciding decision show yet. So I'm gonna go through all three briefly, real quick. So, Brian, I agree with your rivalry that you had. Borg and McEnroe is a movie story. Like, it is the perfect story for a movie. But unfortunately, that's all it is. Really, is a movie, because it was too short. I think it's too short to be considered the best rivalry. Granted, it was great matches, great players. McEnroe is very colorful and animated, and I think that that's why a lot of people remember him coming back, having that tiebreaker point. I just think that there wasn't enough matches to really say that it is the best rivalry, because we don't know what could have happened moving forward. It could have been heavily lopsided after that, because Borg started struggling with his inner self, and then that's why he left early and whatnot. So I think that's just a little too short, but it was great matches between the two. Now it comes down to Agassi and Sampras and Federer and Nadal. Now, man, I loved Sampras and I loved Agassi. And I love Nadal and Federer. Like, I love watching them play each other. They've done a lot for the game, as Jonathan had said. Agassi and Sampras are just a little too lopsided for me. Sampras leading number one by like 185 weeks more than Agassi. He also had more wins head-to-head, won more money. I think Nadal and Federer, it's the better rivalry. I think it's more exciting to watch, especially now. But I think it actually saved men's tennis currently. Kept it alive Yes, Agassi and Sampras kept it alive in the 90s and kind of handed it off to them. But I don't know. Nadal, 999 wins. That's insane. He will get his 1,000th win. And Federer, I mean, he holds records upon records. Great player. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with Federer and Nadal.
You just went with them because the pro went with them. That's all.
That's not why.
All right, so there's our winner. All right, we're gonna jump into our Q&A because this show's actually gone a little longer than our last.
We thought it was gonna be too short.
Yeah. So
All right, guys, I'm talking too much.
no, it's great. Don't worry about it. That's the nice thing about recording. It could go as long as we need it to. But Brian, why don't you start the questions out for Mr. Stark?
Well, first things first, my wife, she wanted me to ask you a question. So this is for my wife, Sandy. She wanted to know what particular drills that you would do to increase your reaction time and your speed.
Reaction time and speed. So reaction time, I would do reflex volleys, where you're both up in net and you're working on, just keeping your racket in front and trying to keep the ball in the air. Don't let it bounce and just go as fast as you can, kind of like ping pong, but it's, obviously you're just going back and forth. So reaction time, I think reflex volleys are fantastic. And then, foot speed, we used to do a lot of 2-on-1s. It's a little bit of an advanced drill depending on how strong a player your wife is. But I mean that where you have two people on one side of the net and one person on the other side, and you're just kind of moving that person around from side to side, or not necessarily back and forth the whole time, but you're going for a certain amount of time, a minute, 2 minutes, and you're just trying to go as long as you can. So I would say those two drills would be simple but great drills for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll go next. I know you've won with Byron Black, you've won with Rick Leach, and you play with Patrick Mcenroe. That didn't come up in our Johnny Mac debate, but who do you feel was your best doubles partner?
I'd have to go with Blackie, with Byron. He and I, we had a great run. We played like 3-4 years together and got to #1 in the world, and we just complemented each other really well. And he was a smaller guy, returned unbelievable. But more so than that, we just really got along well on the court. And right from the start, our first tournament we played was the Swiss indoor in Basel. We won it. We hit it off immediately. So I would say Byron was probably the best player.
Okay, Kev.
I mean, for me, I mean, Martina, when we won Wimbledon, interesting story. Well, she was an amazing doubles player. She volleyed. She was great to play with. So a lot of amazing experience there, obviously. No. Okay. I wasn't going to play with her initially. I was, the year we played, I was playing singles and doubles, and I wasn't going to play mixed doubles. And I got a call to play mixed doubles with Martina, and I said no. And my mom happened to be there that year, and she said, "Who is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it was my agent to play doubles with Martina." And she said, "Navratilova?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "You pick up the phone right now and tell her."
Moms know best. Moms know best.
That's a true story. That's a true story. I wasn't going to play. What a damn, huh? Yeah.
Kevin.
All right, so kind of like a two-parter here, one for the men's side, one for the women's side. So scratch all the players that you've played with. Pick one person, history of tennis, play doubles with on male and female, besides who you've already played with. Who would you pick for the male, and who would you pick?
Someone who I haven't played with?
Yeah, that if you could pick anybody in the history of tennis that you could play doubles with, for male side and female.
Well, I had the opportunity to play with Johnny Mac in an exhibition, but so I'm cheating a little bit, but he is the best doubles player of all time for sure. I would say, but since I played with him before once, I would say I'd love to play dubs with Federer. With Federer, I'd love to be on the same side of the net with him, the same side of the court with him. And then female side, oh geez, I'm gonna say Billie Jean. I'm gonna say Billie Jean King. Yeah, I would have loved to play dubs with her. Yeah, had the opportunity to be on I was a coach on a Fed Cup team where she was the main coach, and she's amazing. She's amazing. She's incredible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, Brian.
So I learned with in the movie there that I watched that Borg had these superstitions. You know, he had to drive to the match in the same kind of car. He did this thing where he stepped on all his rackets to test the tension and all that. Was there any superstitions that you had while you were playing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think we all do a little bit. I mean, I always put my you know, my left sock on first and tied my shoes a certain way. If I won a match, I would do the same routine the whole time. You know, I would follow the same routine. If I would eat the same breakfast, I would eat so it kind of changed week to week. I didn't have something that I did my whole career except the sock thing. But you know, you definitely, when you go on some win streaks, you try to keep the same thing the whole time. Yeah. Yeah.
So your titles, if I have this correct, you won 11 on the hard courts. So do you feel you were better on hard courts and clay or on grass and carpet?
I would think grass and carpet. My game was more suited. You know, I served and volleyed a lot. I had a bigger serve, so the faster surfaces where I had more success. Interestingly enough, you know, I won the French doubles. I was shocked. But you know, I had some good results on the red clay, which was surprising. But you know, if I had to pick a surface where I had to play someone and feel like I could compete, it would be grass or a fast indoor court. That would suit me the best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What would be your favorite or most memorable?
Say that again. Sorry.
What would be your favorite or most memorable moment of your career?
Oh, geez. You know, I would say if I had to pick one moment, when I won Wimbledon with Martina. Yeah, and looking back on that, to be able to say you're a Wimbledon champion and to do it with her was pretty special. You know, so you know, that moment when we won was pretty cool. You know,
you beat Michael Chang for singles win. Wasn't he ranked number 5, I think, at that point?
I was going to say, you know, tennis-wise, beating Chang in Singapore is the Singapore Open, beating him and in a final, you know, in Asia, you know, from a purely tennis standpoint, I'm pretty proud of that. Pretty proud of that. Yeah. I ended up playing Chang a lot for some reason. Why didn't we talk about Stark Chang as a rivalry?
You got enough time to do one more question each, or you?
Sure. Yeah.
I know it's a lot earlier for you out in Oregon. We're all down here in Florida, so. Brian, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I understand that you have a passion for basketball as well. So what was it that led you to tennis and not to basketball?
My dad played college tennis, and it's kind of something we did as a family. And I had a lot of success early in tennis, and thank God I did, because I was a 6-foot center on the basketball court and had no skills from the outside. So no, I love playing hoops, and I actually played basketball all through high school. which people, I know when I was playing junior tennis, people said I was crazy, but I loved it. I loved it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Yeah.
Kevin, go ahead.
So just kind of going back to your college days, what kind of chose, like, what kind of got you to choose Stanford? I know you're from Oregon, right? So
Yeah,
how'd
you
you end
know,
up in Stanford?
it's just kind of back then. A lot of American tennis players. It was kind of the premier program for college tennis. Coach Gould, who was my coach, I think he ended up winning 19 national titles. But Johnny Mack went there. Roscoe Tanner went there. Tim Mayotte went there. So it had a real history, and so that was a pretty easy decision for me.
Was it like a tryout situation, or were you offered scholarships?
No, you're just recruited and offered a scholarship. Yeah, I was lucky.
You're
Yeah,
supposed to say you were a straight A student and they begged you to come.
exactly. Tennis did not matter at all. It didn't help at all getting in there. No, I loved it. I went there 2 years. I went to Stanford 2 years and wouldn't trade it. We ended up winning a national title, and those are, talking about memories. That's one of the best memories I have too, doing that. And tennis is so individual, and you're out there by yourself. So to play college tennis and be there for a team and play for your school was something I'll never forget. And that also being able to say I played Davis Cup and play Davis Cup for the U.S. That you asked me what I'll remember. The first time I played Davis Cup, it was 1994. I've never been so nervous in my life walking onto the court and playing. That was pretty special.
Representing America, so thank you for that.
Yes.
That's great.
No, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So we'll get you out of here with this question. So I know you've worked as an instructor for a really long time now, for years at camps and Oregon Elite Tennis. So have you ever had anyone that either like made it big or someone you think is going to be a star at some point?
I haven't. I've had some kids go play some D1 tennis. Nobody on the tour. I had a student here in Portland that was one of the best. He was probably the top 18-year-old in the country. And now that COVID hit, he's kind of going the wrong direction right now. So I gotta set him straight again. But he's been my best talent, and hopefully you guys will hear of him one of these days.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was an honor. You're a very humble man. I know this is the first time I spoke with you. You didn't. You're like, how'd you dig me up? I mean, you.
You guys must have dug deep, man. You must have dug deep for me. No, but it's an honor for me. I love talking sports, love talking tennis. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, Brian and I, we had talked before. We're hoping maybe like one day we could just do like an interview about your career with you or something if you're ever interested. So
I'm here. I'm here. This is easy for me. Like I said, this is fun for me. So anytime.
Great. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for Jonathan Stark for joining us tonight. Thank you everyone for watching. Remember to join the Facebook group page, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also go to ngscsports.com and Arena Eats. Log on to their website, arenaeats.app, for the ultimate fan experience at your favorite sports venue. Arena Eats mobile app pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order? And we will see everyone back on November 16th at 9 p.m. with guest Major League Baseball first baseman Sid Bream for the second Mount Rushmore of the New York Yankees. So thank you again, John. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you, John.
God bless.
All right. Take care.
Night.
All right.